afraid to speak up now. Remember during COVID, they were censoring doctors. You couldn't say anything. It's tragic what's happening.
Yeah. Fox had been to talk about it. They took it down after half a day because the backlash was so insane. But per the UN, about 868 million people could starve to death in the next 24 months, almost 1 billion. So
in the next 24 months?
Yeah.
We're still crashing today. Dalio says we're now in a depression. So that's why I speak what I said. And so at Freedom Fest, even I got censored there. So what's happening to America? So we're here with Mark Moss. I mean, he did a report on this guy named Klaus Schwab, which I've only heard rumors about. So who is this guy Klaus Schwab one more time, and what are they really up to?
Yeah, so founded the WF, the World Economic Forum. A lot of people might have heard of something like Davos, where every year the world leaders, the policy makers, if you will, the think tankers, they get together every year in Davos. And so you hear like the Davos man. What their policy is this public-private partnership. Public-private partnership. So it's okay. Politicians and business people getting together, public and private, getting together to set policy. So they get together every year in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. And so it was founded by this guy, Klaus Schwab, who he's a German. His father has deep ties into Nazi Germany, obviously. There's deep ties there. He studied under Henry Kissinger. And he's created this think tank, bringing these people together to try to figure out a better way, a more equitable way to run the world. Watch out. Anytime you see that word equitable, you know what they're talking about. They're talking about Marxism. And so what he's done is he's just taken the same ideas. You said we haven't seen this before, but of course we have. It's the same ideas being rehashed. And so it's just Marxism all over. So they get the world leaders together, the politicians, the public, and the private, and they come together in what he's calling stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism. So instead of businesses should focus on profit, he says, no, business shouldn't focus on profit. Business should focus on the community, ESG, environmental, social, governance. We should be equitable. And so basically distorted all these things, but they want to do it through power, through control, forcing people to comply, instead of educating people and showing people better ways. And so they've done it through the public-private partnership, so basically through the money. So now if you don't fall in line with what their policies are, no money for you, no investment for you, right? And if these big companies don't follow along with their policies and push these things down, they don't get the funding, and then they basically get pushed out. And I think it's important to understand too, like where we're at in the world, right? With this peak centralization, central planning.
Right.
I like to say central planning always fails. And because they don't have enough data, they know they don't have enough data. You can't organize billions of people, right? But they're trying to. And so central planning, so the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, the UN, the IMF, the BIS.
What's the BIS?
So that's the
Bank of International Settlements.
The Bank of International Settlements, that nobody knows what the BIS is. And the BIS...
It's a central bank.
The central bank of central banks, exactly. And so if you look at an org chart, I have in a presentation I gave, I think it was at George's conference, I had an org chart of the way I see the world. And on the org chart, the BIS sits at the top. Below the BIS, then you have some of these think tanks. So the World Economic Forum is one of them, the Club of Rome. And so they're the policy makers. And then they push it down to the next row in the org chart, to the policy enforcers, which are the governments. And so the governments sit a few levels down. So it's really a coup of the bankers. And they use this banker, the BIS at the top, to push these ideas through the think tanks and then down to the policy enforcers. And then we're down at the bottom of the subjects of all that, right? So Klaus is kind of running this. He's sitting on top of the world, hobnobbing with all these people, flying their private jets over to Davos, telling us that we need to cut back on our energy. Telling us that we need to eat the bugs. This is on their website. They're talking about why we should be eating bugs. They're more sustainable.
I've seen
was it Kim Basinger? Or no, who was Nicole Kidman? Nicole Kidman, there was she made a commercial of her actually eating bugs. That's what they're putting on TV now. I was on Fox Business 2 weeks ago. They asked me about an article the UN put out, and the UN titled the article, why it's good to be hungry, why being hungry is good. And they were saying we need people to be starving because there's all these jobs that have to be done that nobody would do unless they were starving.
Who said that?
It was an article on the UN website.
Wow.
And like I said, Fox had me on to talk about it. They took it down after half a day because the backlash was so insane. But per the UN, about 868 million people could starve to death in the next 24 months. Almost 1 billion.
The next 24 months?
Yeah. And so at a time, so Marxism, whenever Marxism has been tried in Russia in the early 1900s, about 25 million people starved to death. In Mao's Great Leap Forward, about 50 million people starved to death. Those were horrific, 50 million people.
And they killed them too.
We're talking about almost 1 billion now. And so at a time when we have almost 1 billion people that could be starving to death, shouldn't we be trying to get as much food as possible out? We would try to do everything we can. But in Holland, they've gone and shut down the farms. They're trying to take over their land, and they want to take over the farms and stop them from growing not just food, but also raising cattle and meat. And so now it's massive protests are happening in Holland at a time where we need more food. In the United States, the farmers are being paid not to plant. They're not allowed to plant on some of their land. And they went and they petitioned the Secretary of Agriculture and said, hey, let us plant. We can get more food. And they said, no, it's not in line with our agreement for the Paris Accord.
Paris Accord.
This is the environmental thing.
Which is the environmental thing, which is what President Trump had pulled us out of. And then Biden's very first day in office, the most important thing he had to do by executive order was put us back into the Paris Accord. So we can't grow food in the United States because of climate change. Holland can't grow food. And now the protests are happening all over the world. And it's even bigger. So like in all throughout Europe, there's an energy crisis going on. Everybody should know that by now. I've been talking about it for 2 years. And they don't have natural gas. They're dependent on Russia for natural gas. But we need natural gas in Europe to make fertilizer. And we need fertilizer to grow food. We also need natural gas to process food. I reference quite often what Henry Kissinger said, which was maybe a warning to the world, but I think it was more of a call to arms on their side. So he said, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control a continent. If you control the money, you control the world.
So, not that I'm a lawyer or anything, but when I studied business law, they said intent is everything.
Yeah.
You can do something and make a mistake, or was it intention? There's two different stories there. What's the intent of Kissinger, Klaus Schwab?
This is something I struggle with a lot, and I ask on my videos quite often. Do you think is it stupid or is it evil? And a lot of people,
I go with evil.
It's both, right? So there's certainly people that know what they're doing and it's evil, and then I think there's a lot of people that have just come up in the system and they're just brainwashed by it. But in the Avengers, they had the enemy, the evil guy was Thanos, and he came up with this theory where he had to kill half the world in order to save half the world, right? We had to get rid of half the population. So it was kill half the world to actually save the world. And I feel that's where they are at. They feel that this is a necessary sacrifice, and they're telling us as much. I mean, the Secretary of Energy for the United States is on TV telling people, we get it, gas prices are expensive, you can't afford to drive, but it's necessary. It's necessary for the transition. So they're saying
for the greater good.
For the greater good. I mean, Putin's saying that Americans must sacrifice and must suffer because we have to defeat Russia. It's for the greater good.
But the Achilles heel is that third one, which is the money supply.
And that's the big one.
That's what I wrote about in Capitalist Manifesto. The central bank of the United States was founded in 1913. Guess what else was founded in 1913? Tax Department.
The Federal Reserve and the IRS.
Yep.
And so when you look at all this, and then if you read Marx, he says that a progressive income tax is necessary for the spread of communism.
In the Communist Manifesto, number 5, he had 10 points. Number 5 was the creation of a central bank.
Right.
So central banks are part of Marxism.
Of course.
That's the whole goal.
Yeah.
And that's what I wrote in my manifesto. The central bank is communism, central controlled economy. Most people are completely uninformed.
Is it possible to turn this thing around, or?
Yeah. So it depends on what you're trying to do, right? So if you're just trying to protect yourself and like, can I go live on a mountaintop and protect myself till I die, or am I going to try and save the world, right? And so I'm trying to save the world, right? We're on different things. In the book, the Uncommunist Manifesto, we did our same 10 points, and point number 4 was the abolition of any and all central banks. So we just say we need to end it. Obviously you guys are educators, and I've now become an educator, and I think good ideas win because they're better. And I think if we can have good, intelligent discussion, then we can turn the tide on this thing. And so I think that we need to highlight how bad and disastrous these ideas are, and then show that there are better ideas out there. Now, they've done a really good job of taking over the education system. So when communism was defeated in the 70s, and really started in about the 60s, it kind of went underground. and it came into the universities in the United States. And so they've done a really good job playing this long game, and they started with changing the college age kids' viewpoints on these things, who have now moved into media, who have now moved into government. I think we have to use their same playbook, fight fire with fire, if you will, right? And so get back into the education and start changing their mind now. I think also the one thing that we have to our advantage is their ideas don't work. The system's crumbling. The financial system is done. Like the EU is on the verge of breaking up. The bond problem that they have is one that they probably can't solve over there. The pigs nations down below, they're done. Germany has lost its position. The energy is too high. So the EU is on the verge of breaking up.
Who are the pigs?
The Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain. So the southern nations in the European Union. Italy and Greece have to constantly be bailed out. They don't have any production. Germany has been the production engine of Europe, but now they've become a net importer.
Because of the
energy
war.
prices have gone so high that they can't afford to produce anymore. They have to import their energy. But why do they have to import their energy? Well, they shut all their nuclear reactors off. Over the last decade, they've been shutting them down. And so their energy prices have gone up by 8 times, when next door, France, they still have cheap power because they still have nuclear.
So do you see, let's go back to Holland, which we think of as a peaceful nation, more or less. What are they doing to fight back there?
Humans can take a lot of abuse from governments, but when you can't eat or feed your family, that's when it's like game on, right? 9 meals to anarchy, they say. If you don't eat for 9 meals, it's on, right?
What 3 for me?
So what they've been doing is they've been taking to the streets, sort of like we saw in Canada with the truckers, but now it's the farmers with their tractors. And they're taking these tractors and they're making the Canadian truckers look like child play. They are out in serious droves. Some of the farmers got arrested. The farmers went to the police station, surrounded them, and made them release the farmers. They've been filling up the city with manure. They blocked the airports. The fishermen have gotten involved. Now the fishermen are blocking the ports. But now it's spread to Poland. It's spread to Germany.
You're doing the same thing.
They're all doing.
So
all the farmers are uniting in protest.
So it's backing up. It's like the drain got clogged, and now it's backing up on Klaus Schwab and buddies.
Yeah. And so now they're like, well, if we can't grow food, then no food. So you get no food then. And the shelves are bare, and they're feeling the pain. What Marxism thinks is that if we could take away your private property, and we could take and you could just have everything, like live in a commune, like communism, and we could take away human desire to strive and to have more, because that's what poisons us. This capitalist system that makes me want to work and achieve more and have
is
more
human
order.
nature.
Right, human nature. If we can take that away, people would be happy. If they, because right now we're unhappy because we don't have what we want. We're always striving. We always have to work harder. And so if we could take that away, but that's what they think. So you'll own nothing and you'll be happy because you won't need to strive. Nobody else. You won't see anybody else having something that you don't have. And they think there's this utopia, but they don't understand there's human nature, to your point.
But that's what I'm asking you. Is it intent or is it a mistake?
It's 100% intent, right?
Yeah.
So obviously Karl Marx wrote the book, The Communist Manifesto, and that book, unfortunately, as far as I understand, has become the most read book in both political science and economics.
Correct.
What they said is that there's a struggle between classes, the rich and the poor, the proletariat, and the bourgeoisie.
Yep.
Cultural Marxism today it's a struggle between all classes, white and black, men and women, gay and straight, etc., right? Which is the same thing. It's the struggle between people, arbitrary classes. We redefined and said, no, the real struggle, the real axis of struggle is between the individual and the collectivist. It keeps trying to pull them into these groups and take away their individual identity.
Which is centralization.
Which is centralization, right? And
Command and control. This is communism.
well, because what these Keynesians want to do is they want to boil us down to a digit on a spreadsheet. And so these people are like this, these people are like this, and they take away the things like motivation, and they don't take things into consideration like that make us an individual. I believe that individualism is great. I believe individualism is necessary because if we're different, we can all see the same thing, but draw different conclusions. We see different problems and we come up with different solutions. And so we can have more progress in the world. If we're all the same, looking at the same thing, what do we have? No infinite return.
Yeah, it's called free market capitalism, but more important is we're fighting for our freedoms. It's tragic what's happening.
Yeah.
So we fight for our freedoms more than anything else, not for capitalism. You want to be a Marxist? Be a Marxist. You want to be a tranny? Have a good life. Who you sleep with? None of my business. But don't take my freedom away.